When two security guards deliberately insisted that a black Marine be removed from her son's graduation ceremony, no one expected 5 Navy SEAL operators to rise silently from the edges of the auditorium and advance as one, letting their unwavering presence and steely gazes fall silent over the crowd without a single word. Serena Carter's Dodge Charger rasped to a halt in the Elmridge High School parking lot, the engine's rumble echoing through the hot West Texas morning. Outside, the American flag snapped in the breeze atop the aging brick facade. Clusters of students and parents laughed, balloons bumped, and the sun beat down on the courtyard in harsh waves. But for Serena, all of it was a blurred backdrop to the storm of emotion pounding in her chest. She released the steering wheel and sat still for a long moment, staring into the rearview mirror, into eyes that reflected both fierce resolve and quiet worry. After 8 hours of driving past endless cornfields and stretches of empty highway, each crack in the asphalt stirred memories. The smile of her late husband as he used to chauffeur their small family on weekend outings, Jaden's cheerful chatter from the back seat, the tiny hand that grasped hers on the first night his father was away on deployment. Reaching down inside her uniform jacket, Serena carefully withdrew a slightly worn photograph. Its corner faded from her breast pocket. In it, the 3 of them stood shoulder to shoulder, smiling in the golden glow of late afternoon. Jaden's little arm barely made it around his mother's waist. Despite countless relocations and grueling missions, she had never left home without it. With a soft touch to the photo's edge, she whispered as if sending her words on the breeze. "Honey, I'll be here to witness our son's greatest moment." Drawing in a slow, steady breath, she steadied herself, her eyes igniting with the grit of someone forged by challenges, loss, and long stretches of solitude. Serena opened the car door, smoothed her uniform, and stood tall beneath the vast blue sky. Each step toward the school entrance was measured but sure. A weight of single-parent nights spent poring over Jaden's homework, lone parent-teacher meetings, long days at the training grounds followed by hurried returns home. Now, on the brink of adulthood, Jaden was moments away from receiving his diploma, the culmination of a relentless journey undertaken without complaint. And Serena knew that beyond this triumph lay a story of love, sacrifice, and the unwavering strength of a mother, a Marine, who had quietly held the foundation of her family steady no matter how fierce the winds. The moment Serena stepped through the glass doors of the auditorium, she was swept up in the excitement of this milestone day, row upon row of plastic chairs crammed shoulder to shoulder, laughter echoing beneath the time-worn dome, red and white balloons weaving among name placards and students' keepsake photos plastered to the walls. From outside, the PA system still reminded parents to silence their phones and keep order, but inside, it felt more like a festival than a ceremony, every corner buzzing with energy. She made a beeline for the welcome table by the entrance, and handed her pre-printed ticket to a young man in a tee that read, "Elmridge Volunteers." His name was Matt. Though his face held a trace of nerves, his eyes lingered an extra beat on the U.S. Marine Corps insignia on her shoulder. "Congratulations, ma'am," he said politely, pointing without taking his gaze off her crisp uniform. "Family seating, 3rd row on the left." Serena offered a brief nod of thanks and slipped into the throng. The air grew warmer with anticipation. Families clustered around bouquets and gifts. Parents fussed over perfectly tied bows. Grandparents hustled in search of the best seats. Somewhere nearby, a little girl clutched a "Go Marcus" sign, her arm trembling as she mirrored her parents' excited chatter. Yet, despite the jubilation, Serena felt the chill of stares along the aisle. A few middle-aged women in the front section, among them Karen Walters, the vice PTA president's wife, leaned in, whispered something, then shot Serena a quick look as she passed. Karen's eyes flickered with curiosity tinged by discomfort, an unspoken tension lurking behind her flawless makeup. She sensed those appraising glances keenly. A discreet respect here, a barely concealed disdain there, and mostly a watchful vigilance. The same invisible wall she'd faced countless times outside barracks or battlefields, in communities accustomed to uniformity and unnerved by anything unfamiliar. Sliding into her assigned chair, a slightly wobbly plastic seat with a small crack in the back, Serena smoothed her uniform with casual indifference. Compared with hours spent drilling under a blazing sun, this was nothing. She rested her hands on her lap and stole a glance at the stage, where Jaden, her son, the culmination of her youthful sacrifice and determination, would soon be called forward. The crowd's noise never faltered, yet in fleeting moments Serena felt every eye turn toward her. A boy, perched on his father's knee, murmured, "Mom, who is that?" A group of former classmates whispered just behind her. Though she'd grown accustomed to such scrutiny, she drew a steadying breath, kept her gaze on the stage, and let a calm, confident smile settle on her lips, as if to tell the world she was unshakable, no matter how many eyes probed. At the far end of the hall, two security guards, Derek Garvin and Mike Malley, scanned the audience. Their radios clipped to their hips. They wore colder expressions than anyone else. Garvin, short, with broad shoulders and a perpetually furrowed brow, shot a suspicious look at Serena's family section as he passed by. Malley, tall and lean, chewed gum with a nonchalant air, but his eyes flickered continuously, tracking her every move. Even without any confrontation, Serena felt it keenly. In this room, overflowing with congratulations and cheers, she remained an outsider. And though she'd braced herself for any surprise, she silently prayed her son's graduation would proceed peacefully, free of any more invisible walls. Yet, deep within, the instincts of a battle-hardened Marine whispered that the real test might only just be beginning. The auditorium fell into a hush as the familiar strains of the national anthem sounded through the speakers. Every row of chairs snapped to attention in unison, the plastic seats scraping together in a series of sharp, staccato notes before giving way to the solemn dignity of the moment. Serena rose slowly, her heels clicking firmly on the worn stone floor. With her right hand pressed lightly over her heart, she felt the steady yet powerful beat beneath her palm. A heartbeat that had carried her through countless trials, now swelling with silent pride. Under the soft yellow glow of the aging hall lights, Serena's uniform stood out even more against the sea of muted shirts and cheerful dresses. She didn't have to try. Her posture was impeccable, back straight, chin lifted in reflexive parade ground precision honed by thousands of hours in formation, farewells at military gates, and life-and-death moments on the training fields. Even those accustomed to seeing service members couldn't quite name the quiet authority she exuded. Up front, Jaden Carter, a tall, lean young man with a crisp haircut and a blend of pride and a hint of sadness in his eyes, stood among hundreds of fellow graduates. He scanned the crowd, searching for his mother's face, longing for a reassuring nod, an encouraging smile. In that instant, memories of his father flooded back. How he'd stood beside Jaden on his first day of school, uniformed like his mother, his deep voice telling Jaden, "Whenever you hear the anthem, remember the pride and responsibility of our family." The anthem swelled, powerful, united, yet deeply personal. Some mouthed the words, others sang out with full force, and still others simply stood with hand over heart, eyes flicking around the hall. Serena kept her gaze locked on the stage. Her back formed an invisible shield to protect Jaden from anything untoward. Yet at the left edge of the auditorium, in the dimmer light, Derek Garvin and Mike Malley watched her intently. Garvin tightened his fist, brow furrowed, while Malley cast occasional glances Serena's way, annoyance and restlessness in his eyes. Inside their heads, what they'd considered just another routine assignment was already germinating into something more calculated. Garvin leaned in to whisper to Malley, lips pinched, "I hate this showboating. Let's see how stubborn she really is." Malley cracked his neck, chomping on his gum, half mocking, half provocative. "Yeah, hey, what can one woman do in a crowd this size?" But in the center of the hall, Serena stood unwavering, as solid as a marker on shifting sands. And far above the sea of faces, Jaden finally spotted his mother's eyes. One slight nod, one warm smile, and he felt strength surge anew. In that moment, he understood more clearly than ever. This wasn't just his graduation day, but proof that his mother, the toughest woman he'd ever known, could stand firm through any challenge, even those that sprang from what should have been the safest place of all, an ordinary graduation ceremony. The anthem ended. The audience sat, and the formal proceedings began. But for Serena, for Garvin and Malley, and for Jaden, the air had already shifted, an undercurrent hinting that the real storm might just be about to break. The moment the anthem ended, the auditorium erupted again with the scraping of chairs, hushed whispers of children, and the rustle of hundreds of graduation programs being flipped open. But in the graduates' family section, a heavy silence spread as two uniformed Harlan security guards peeled away from the rows behind and strode straight toward Serena Carter. Derek Garvin led the way, short and broad-shouldered. He seemed to block the aisle with his frame. His eyes were cold, lips pressed into a hard line, annoyance plain on his face as he elbowed past the crowded seats. Beside him, Mike Malley, tall and lanky with sallow skin, chewed gum in small, steady bites, projecting an air of careless hostility. They walked deliberately, each footstep sending a ripple of tension through anyone nearby. Still focused on the stage, Serena suddenly noticed them standing squarely in her row's entrance. Garvin spoke first, his tone feigned politeness, but dripping with ice. "Ma'am, you'll need to move back to the next row. This area's full for graduates' families." Serena wasn't surprised. She turned slowly, pulled her ticket from her uniform pocket, and held it up calmly, her gaze unwavering. "This seat is for my family," she said. "It's clearly printed. Row 3, family section. A volunteer confirmed it when I came in." Malley smirked, barely glancing at the ticket, eyes narrowing in mockery. "Sure, but seating's all been allocated. There are VIP guests coming. Moving you down will be easier for everyone." On the surface it sounded polite, but Serena recognized the hidden prejudice, a reminder that no matter what paperwork she showed, she was deemed unworthy of the front rows reserved for more important people. She held his gaze, tone calm but firm. "I drove 8 hours just to sit here on my son's most important day. I'm not going anywhere." Nearby, parents started to lean in. Mrs. Linda Walker, a gentle silver-haired woman sitting in front, whispered, "Don't let them push you out. You have every right to be here." But Garvin pressed on. He leaned in, voice low and threatening. "This is an order from the organizers. Cooperate, and it'll go smoothly. Otherwise, we'll have to get tougher." Malley crossed his arms, scanning the crowd with a cold warning in his eyes. "Don't anyone interfere." Serena stood her ground, gripping her ticket, eyes locked on Garvin. She knew this fight wasn't just about a seat. It was about dignity, principle, and a mother's promise to her son, even if she had to stand alone against hundreds of strangers. At the edge of the hall, Karen Walters, the PTA vice president's wife and perennial community connector, watched through tightly pressed lips, then quietly pulled out her phone to record, curiosity and satisfaction glinting in her eyes. Around her, parents whispered anxiously, unable to look away from the escalating confrontation. All those glances, those half-measures of speech, had built a real wall of discrimination, one that Serena, with her calm posture and steady gaze, was fighting with nothing but her soldier's pride and unshakable resolve. From this moment on, Serena and Jaden's story at Elmridge would turn in a way no one expected, where dignity and determination would be the only weapons strong enough to break through the invisible walls now rising across this once ordinary graduation ceremony. The air around the family section seemed to freeze, the auditorium's usual clamor retreating into the background and making way for a strange, heavy silence centered on Serena and the two guards. Serena held Garvin's cold stare without flinching, her hand gripping the ticket like a declaration of an irrevocable right. "I drove 8 hours to sit here and watch my son graduate," she said, her voice measured but unwavering. "I'm not moving." Her words, simple yet powerful, carried just enough volume for those nearby to hear. It wasn't a challenge or a plea. It was the voice of steadfast resolve, of a mother who had poured her pride, her love, and her dignity into this moment. Mrs. Linda Walker, the kindly silver-haired woman with sharp, experienced eyes, leaned forward and whispered, "Don't let them push you out. You deserve to be here, just like anyone else." Garvin's expression hardened. He lifted his radio, pressed the button, and spoke into the mic in a low, tense tone, never breaking eye contact with Serena. A flicker of impatience crossed his face, revealing that her unyielding stance was pushing his tolerance to its limit. Mally chose another tactic. He bent closer to Serena, voice hushed, the words clipped through his teeth. "You're making this difficult for us. No one wants a scene, especially not on your son's big day, but if you keep this up, we'll have to enforce the rules." Those chilling words, "enforce the rules," were a thinly veiled threat, a reminder of the fragile power they wielded and a test of how far Serena would go. In truth, she knew every regulation and every line on her ticket. This was no longer about a seat, it was about a black woman, a Marine, being tested by the deep-rooted prejudice saturating this small community. Garvin glanced around and noticed more eyes fixed on them. His lips pressed together, and his hand trembled slightly as he tightened his grip on the radio, debating whether to push further. In his gaze now burned wounded pride and annoyance at the unexpected fortitude of a woman he'd underestimated. Across the aisle, a few parents began whispering, some furtively lifting their phones to record. Karen Walters, seated in the VIP section, methodically tapped her phone, eyes flicking back and forth as if she awaited some juicy moment to share later. A young father, whose child was in Jaden's class, leaned toward his wife and murmured, "What are they doing? Why are they kicking her out of the family section?" "Maybe because she isn't like the rest of them," his wife replied softly, eyes glued to the scene. Despite the mounting pressure, Serena remained perfectly still, spine straight, expression calm, gaze unwavering. Her heart pounded, but each breath was steady, just as it had been during grueling drills on the training ground, or when she'd faced real danger head-on. Mally narrowed his eyes and issued his final warning, his ulterior motive plain. "We're only trying to help you. Don't let this get out of hand." Serena met his gaze evenly. "If this place is truly fair," she said quietly, "then I'm exactly where I belong." Her quiet determination, and the undeniable presence she projected began to erode the invisible wall around her, leaving those who personified prejudice unsteady. In that charged moment, everything hinged on the next move. Serena knew she wasn't just defending her own seat, she was defending the dignity of everyone who'd ever been forced to stay silent in a place that should have been fair. The tension that had been simmering just moments before now rippled outward as murmurs swelled around Serena. Phones discreetly rose, their screens flashing in the auditorium's dim mix of light and shadow, silently recording every move, a mute testament to what was unfolding. Even the hush of the air conditioning couldn't cool the charged atmosphere. Noticing all eyes trained on him and Serena, Derek Garvin shed his feigned politeness and revealed his true colors. His face hardened, brow furrowed, lips curling into a mocking sneer. "Do you think wearing that uniform makes you more special than everyone else here? This is a school, not a barracks." His words landed like a hammer blow, cutting through the heavy silence. Each syllable was aimed not only at Serena, but at anyone who'd ever donned a uniform, anyone deemed different in this small community, where conformity and unspoken rules reigned supreme. Garvin's tone betrayed layers of bias, racial, gender, and anti-military prejudice, a toxic mix thought buried by time, now roaring to life before an audience. The air felt thick and unmoving. Mally glanced at Garvin, uneasy but silent, accomplice to the weak man's prejudice. Up front, Mrs. Linda Walker leaned forward, her eyes blazing with indignation. "This is outrageous," she whispered, hand trembling slightly as she rested it on Serena's shoulder, a silent show of support. But Serena, like an unshakable monument amid the storm, remained ice-calm. Her gaze was fierce, defiance shining without a single raised voice. She responded, her tone clear and resolute, each word hammered home. "I'm simply exercising my rights. You need to respect that." Her reply, though quiet, struck a chord in those nearby. Some nodded in affirmation, others fell silent, their looks conveying silent solidarity. A little girl behind them, clutching a "Go Marcus" sign, turned to her mother and asked, "Mom, why are they making that lady leave?" Her mother bent down, eyes betraying her confusion. "Sometimes people are afraid of what's different, sweetheart." In the far corner, Karen Walters continued to record every second, her lips pressed tight, expression unreadable. Was she pleased or worried? Around her, faces showed a kaleidoscope of emotions: empathy, anger, indifference, even glee, painting a vivid portrait of this small community's divide. Garvin, undeterred, pressed on, his voice sharp. "I'll say it again. This is a priority seating area. Making things difficult for us only makes it hard on yourself." Serena offered a faint, knowing smile, the smile of someone battle-tested, who understood that a single moment of doubt could unravel everything. She held Garvin's gaze, then glanced around at the onlookers, sending an unspoken message. She would not budge, even if this entire auditorium stood torn between fairness and prejudice. Though the moment hadn't yet erupted, everyone sensed that it would only take a single spark to ignite an uncontrollable storm. And, in his escalating frustration and impotence, Garvin revealed himself as the true embodiment of those invisible walls. Walls that Serena, with her calm resolve and proud dignity, was steadily cracking before the eyes of all Elmridge. The tension in the auditorium felt poised to erupt when, amidst the packed rows and restless stares, an unexpected shift occurred. As Garvin was still asserting his authority over Serena, who sat unmoving like a bronze statue, a figure rose from the back of the hall. Creed Marston, salt and pepper hair framing his chiseled face, stood with the calm decisiveness of a combat veteran. He strode forward, eyes icy and sharp, scanning for threats before locking them squarely on Garvin. His footsteps were silent, but his presence instantly changed the atmosphere around Serena. She was no longer alone, no longer an easy target. Behind Creed, Javier Meeks rose as well. Warm brown eyes nestled in a powerful frame, he moved like a living steel wall, silent and resolute, fixated on the two guards blocking Serena's row. Nearby, Zach Wells, dark-skinned and stern-faced, gaze piercing through any pretense, stood and advanced with the collected calm of someone accustomed to danger. David Horton, golden-haired with a close-cropped beard and a former SEAL lieutenant's bearing, quietly joined them. He walked down the aisle with determined steps, eyes alert. Finally, Enrique Soto, the friendly-faced Latino whose firm gestures bespoke unwavering resolve, closed their formation. No words passed between them, but their shared focus on Serena spoke volumes. They were united in purpose and timing. Their silent rise sent a fresh wave of tension through the crowd. Parents who had only dared whisper now leaned in to watch, phones recording, and even streaming every second. The auditorium, once a backdrop for celebration, took on the feel of a battlefield where both sides braced for a decisive confrontation. Garvin and Malley clearly sensed the shift. Garvin hesitated for a fraction of a second, suspicion flickering in his eyes, but his defensive instincts kicked in. He squared his shoulders, his voice rising in a bid to reclaim control. "What's going on here? This is school security business, not some guest matter." Creed Marston didn't answer immediately. He stepped forward to stand between Serena and the guards, using his own body as a silent shield. Fixing his stare on Garvin, Creed's voice was low and steady, each word heavy with intent. "What happens here concerns everyone who knows what fairness and respect truly mean. If you think this is your place to decide who deserves to sit up front, you're sorely mistaken." Javier Meeks, voice warm yet firm, added, "The evidence is plain for all to see who's in the right. Don't let a minor incident stain this graduation." David Horton, with his unmistakable Southern drawl, spoke quietly. "We've fought beside this woman for what's right. Don't test our patience now." Enrique Soto laid a supportive hand on Serena's shoulder, while Zach Wells simply fixed Garvin with a steely glare. No words needed. The message was clear. In that instant, Garvin realized his power was more fragile than ever. The invisible walls that had confined Serena began to crumble, shaken by the silent, steadfast stand of these former teammates. And Serena, though silent herself, understood deeply. This was no longer just her fight. It was the resolve of an entire generation refusing to be pushed back by prejudice and injustice, anywhere they might encounter it. The tension in the auditorium, already stretched like a taut string, snapped into a sudden hush as Serena's former teammates rose in unison. Their presence, 5 Navy SEALs standing shoulder to shoulder, was more than a silent warning. It declared that this small confrontation had become everyone's business, and no one could pretend ignorance any longer. Creed Marston stood directly before Serena, chin lifted, eyes cold as blades. His voice, low, clear, and resonant, cut through the silence and struck every ear in the hall. "Is there any reason she should be bothered here?" No shout was needed. The sheer force of his question froze the rows in front of him and halted every recording phone. Garvin, stripped of his earlier confidence, floundered for a moment before snapping back defensively. "We're just doing our duty. This is what the organizers instructed us to do." Before he could finish, Javier Meeks stepped forward. His warm brown eyes, set in a powerful frame, spoke as loudly as his words. "Don't you recognize her? This is Commander Serena Carter, who saved our lives, who put herself on the line in combat to protect her teammates. You owe her respect." Each word from Meeks shattered the walls of prejudice and false authority. Their shared history was not just a private story of service, it was a reminder that true values rise above petty rules. David Horton's voice followed, measured but ice-cold. "No one here has the right to force her out of her seat for any reason. We do not tolerate discrimination in any form." Zach Wells nodded, his gaze sweeping the audience, affirming that every word they'd spoken carried the weight of truth and honor. Enrique Soto remained silent, but the solidity of his stance spoke volumes. Serena was not alone. Their declarations rolled through the auditorium like thunder, making it impossible for Garvin, Mally, or any parent, student, or teacher to look away. Some gaped in astonishment. Others bowed their heads in shame. Everywhere, a quiet pride in fairness and humanity began to stir. Under the dim yellow lights, Serena sat motionless, her face calm but her eyes shining with deep gratitude and renewed confidence. The covert stares, whispered slights, and nameless bias she had endured were now openly confronted in the most crowded place and at the most unexpected moment. Garvin, under the fierce scrutiny of those 5 SEALs, found himself at a loss for words. The fragile wall of authority he'd tried to build cracked under their silent pressure. Mally stood frozen, his hand trembling as he realized that this security detail no longer offered any protection. From the back, a parent called out, "Exactly. Leave her alone. This is her family's seat." A smattering of applause broke out, then surged into a chorus of agreement. The power of unity, the very strength Serena had devoted her life to building, was igniting hearts that had seemed silent. In the eye of that storm of tension, Serena felt, perhaps for the first time in years, the invisible walls she had always faced begin to tremble, shaken by the bonds of comradeship, the force of righteousness, and voices raised at the moment it mattered most. As the applause still echoed and stunned gazes lingered, a deep quiet settled over Serena's mind. Amid the convulsive energy of the auditorium, her senses were pulled back to a distant battlefield. Kandahar, scorching sun beating down, life and death separated by the thinnest of threads. Beneath that brutal heat, gunfire and screams ripped through the air, shredding every boundary of fear. In the choking smoke and the acrid scent of cordite, Lieutenant Serena Carter, young, fearless, didn't hesitate. She vaulted from the sandbagged bunker, M4 rifle heavy in her hands, weaving through a hail of enemy rounds to reach the overturned Humvee where her SEAL team lay trapped under withering fire. Flames roared and smoke clawed at her throat, but she pressed on. She hoisted Javier Meeks, his leg already hit, onto her back, firing as she retreated, each shot a defiant promise of survival. Zach Wells, wounded by shrapnel through the shoulder, gripped Serena's arm like it was his lifeline. Creed Marston, blood streaming down his face, locked eyes with her and gasped, "Don't leave anyone behind! Don't leave anyone!" In that split second between life and death, Serena's answer was instinct. She saved them all, dragging her teammates to safety, instilling in each the will to survive and an unbreakable bond of respect. The fire left more than scars on Serena's arm. Hidden each day beneath her uniform, it forged an unspoken link between her and those 5 men. No oath or words were needed. One glance or a single step forward was enough to say, where Serena stands, they stand with her, whether in the crossfire of Kandahar or the press of an Elmridge graduation ceremony. Back in the present, Serena caught Creed's eyes, still as steely and calm as ever, now burning with pride and loyalty. The seals formed an unspoken ring of protection around her, reminding everyone that the woman who'd risked her life for them would have her dignity defended at all costs, whether from bullets or petty prejudice over a seat. Looking over her shoulder, Serena felt the power of her battle family, a bond born only on life and death ground, understood only by those who have shared that crucible. It was that strength which rendered every slur, every act of discrimination, every whispered slight utterly meaningless. On this battlefield at Elmridge, only loyalty, respect, and the honor forged in blood and fire remained. In that moment, every doubt and solitude Serena had ever faced in America, as a black woman, as a Marine, as a single mother, dissolved. In their place rose the hush of a silent pride, the unspoken authority of a true leader. And from that firm foundation, Serena knew she could face any challenge, whether on a war-torn field or in the hidden battlefields of everyday life. The echoes of battlefield memories hadn't yet faded when the Elmridge Auditorium suddenly shattered its usual patterns. The long-standing tension spilled over an invisible line, calling forth the school's highest authorities and the pride of this tight-knit community to intervene. At the front of the hall, Principal Ellen Murphy and Vice Principal Frank Benson pushed hurriedly through the crowd, faces taut with concern, their steps urgent. They'd caught wind of the commotion, seen countless phone cameras trained on the confrontation, and realized this was no small local incident but a wave spreading across social media and through the town. Principal Murphy didn't hesitate. She stepped squarely between the two security guards and Serena's circle of protectors, 5 silent, unwavering SEALs, and addressed Garvin and Mally in a firm, composed voice. "Gentlemen, step back immediately. There is no place here for injustice or disrespect. I insist you cease all disruptive actions toward our guest." Vice Principal Benson, silver at the temples and unyielding, added, "On behalf of the organizing committee, we sincerely apologize to Ms. Serena Carter for what just occurred. You and your family are absolutely entitled to these seats, and the school is profoundly grateful for your service and sacrifices." Their words rang out like a clarion call, not just to the guards, but to everyone in the hall. Garvin, cheeks flushed with shame, stumbled backward, eyes fixed on the floor to avoid the hundreds of disappointed and chastened stares. Mally, his usual nonchalance gone, retreated in silence, each heavy step carrying him out of the SEAL's protective ring and past the dozens of disapproving glances. Applause swelled from all sides. First, a few hesitant claps, then a sustained ovation. Some parents leaped to their feet, others clasped their hands in quiet emotion. Mrs. Linda Walker beamed, giving Serena's shoulder a light, congratulatory squeeze. Parents who had stayed silent now nodded encouragingly. "Thank you, Miss Carter. You've inspired us all." Even students beyond the inner circle cheered, eyes shining with admiration. Jaden, standing tall among his fellow graduates, looked up at his mother with pride he'd never known before. In the VIP section, Karen Walters put down her phone with a guilty glance. Many who had whispered doubts now offered approving nods, recognizing they'd witnessed a moment of real significance, not just for Serena, but for the entire community. Amid that outpouring of support, Serena didn't need another word. She simply smiled, glanced first at her 5 former teammates, those who had faced life and death at her side, and then at her son. In her eyes shone a rare joy. Justice had finally spoken. The honor, dignity, and worth of a soldier, a mother, a human being had been restored for all to see. From that moment on, the Elmridge Auditorium was more than a graduation venue. It had become the stage for a quiet yet resounding victory of right over petty prejudice, of dignity over generations of bias. The echoes of applause and words of encouragement still fading, Jaden Carter stood motionless among the line of graduates. He couldn't take his eyes off his mother, the only woman in uniform in the auditorium, sitting tall and composed amid the sea of faces. Jaden's heart pounded so fiercely he bit his lip to keep from bursting into tears right then and there. Every tense moment replayed in Jaden's mind like ripples on a pond. He remembered all the years his mother had faced the pain of losing his father alone, raising him, enduring the suspicious glances and whispered rumors at school, on the streets, anywhere they went. He recalled late nights she spent by his desk, urging him to be patient in the face of injustice. Now her lessons felt more vivid and clear than ever. Jaden gripped the edge of his graduation gown, his chest heaving uncontrollably. He knew that if his mother had been forced to leave, he would have walked right out too, refusing to accept his diploma. But then he looked at her. Calm as she fielded insults, resolute as she stayed seated despite the guards' pressure, dignified as her 5 teammates rose to shield her, and most of all, unwavering under the spotlight of every gaze in the room. His classmates around him fell silent, then began to whisper, "Jaden, your mom is amazing. She's the strongest woman I've ever seen." Riley, a red-headed girl beside him, gently squeezed his hand. "If that were my mom," she said softly, "I don't know if I could stay so strong." Jaden only smiled, his eyes locked on his mother. He realized then that every sacrifice she'd made, every stern lesson, every quiet night spent watching him grow, had led to this moment of vindication. And it wasn't just him. Many students felt inspired, as if they were witnessing a living lesson in courage and dignity. In the parents' section, Garvin and Mally slipped away, faces flushed, avoiding every eye. Even Karen Walters, who had once sneered and judged Jaden and his mother, hung her head, shame and regret flickering in her gaze. On stage, Principal Ellen Murphy offered Serena a warm, appreciative nod, a silent thank you, and an acknowledgement that people like Serena truly enrich Elmridge High. And Jaden, through it all, understood that he didn't need to argue or lash out in anger. His mother had taught him to meet injustice with dignity, strength, and unshakable calm. The greatest power anyone can carry through life's journey. The PA system called the next graduate's name, but for Jaden, the world seemed to slow. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and stepped forward to the stage with unwavering pride. Pride in being Serena Carter's son, and in the knowledge that she will always be the greatest role model he'll ever know. The echo of applause and words of encouragement had barely faded when Jaden Carter remained frozen in line with the other graduates. He couldn't tear his eyes away from his mother, the only woman in uniform in the auditorium, her posture unwavering, her gaze calm yet resolute. Jaden's heart pounded so fiercely he bit his lip to keep from bursting into tears at that very moment. Each tense moment replayed in his mind like ripples on a pond. He thought of all the years she'd faced the pain of losing his father alone, raising him through suspicious glances and whispered rumors at school, on the street, anywhere they went. He remembered the late nights she spent by his desk, urging him to remain patient in the face of injustice. Now, every lesson she'd taught him felt more vivid and true than ever. Jaden gripped the edge of his graduation gown, his chest rising and falling with emotion he could no longer control. If his mother had been forced to stand, he knew he would have walked out too, refusing to accept his diploma. But then he watched her, serenely answering provocation, remaining seated despite the guards' pressure, and seeing her 5 comrades rise to shield her. And above all, witnessing how she held herself steady under the weight of hundreds of gazes. His classmates fell silent, then began to murmur in awe. "Jaden, your mom is incredible. She's the strongest woman I've ever seen." Riley, a red-headed girl standing beside him, gently squeezed his hand. "I don't know if my mom could ever stay that strong," she whispered. Jaden smiled but didn't speak. He knew that every sacrifice she'd made, every stern word, every sleepless night, had led to this moment of triumph. And he wasn't alone in feeling inspired. Many students felt they'd just witnessed a living lesson in courage and dignity. In the parents' rows, Garvin and Mally slipped away, faces flushed with shame. Even Karen Walters, who had once sneered and judged, lowered her gaze, regret shining in her eyes. On stage, Principal Murphy offered Serena a warm, appreciative nod, a silent thank you for the honor she'd brought to Elmridge High. And Jaden understood that he didn't need to shout or protest. His mother had shown him how to face injustice with dignity, with unwavering strength and calm, the greatest power anyone can carry through life's journey. When his name was finally called, Jaden Carter, the auditorium erupted once more. As he stepped onto the stage to receive his diploma, the pride in his heart was unshakable. He was Serena Carter's son, and she would always be his greatest example of courage. The last rounds of applause still echoed in the auditorium when, outside on Elmridge's quad, the campus burst into color and joyous reunion. Graduates celebrated in the arms of friends and family, but none so remarkable as Jaden Carter, who dashed through the crowd, ignoring every cheer to seek out one embrace. His mother's. Serena had barely risen from her seat when Jaden hurled himself into her arms, as if every barrier and trial had dissolved with his racing heart and tears. "If they'd made you move, Mom, I would have left this graduation right then," Jaden whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. Serena tightened her hold, a soldier's strong hands resting gently on her son's shoulders, all the tenderness of a mother guiding her grip. She looked into Jaden's eyes, her voice soft but carrying the weight of every hardship and silent victory she'd ever known. "You've grown up now, Jaden. Don't let anger steal life's most important moment. Dignity isn't in shouting, it's in standing firm through the storm. Today, you showed me you have the strength to walk your own path." Jaden's tears turned to triumphant laughter, salty drops giving way to a proud smile. Behind them, Serena's 5 former teammates stood in silent vigil, nodding in satisfaction, their eyes shining with unspoken pride and gratitude. Off to the side, Karen Walters watched from among the parents, her once haughty posture replaced by a quiet regret as she realized how small her own prejudices had been. Jaden didn't let go. He felt the full warmth and steadiness of his mother's embrace. For the first time, he understood why she'd always said, "True strength doesn't come from force or loud words. It comes from determination, forgiveness, and unconditional love." "I'm so proud of you, Mom. And I'm proud of you, Jaden. Just stay true to who you are. The right people will come to you. Those who don't understand can't shake you." That afternoon, the Elmridge sky shone brighter than ever. From the edge of the quad, onlookers who once doubted now watched the Serena Jaden embrace, nodding quietly in wonder at the power of compassion, dignity, and the courage to stand firm against prejudice. Jaden knew these words would be his most precious keepsake, the indelible mark of a mother's love, and the memory of the day Elmridge truly changed. The final echoes of hugs and congratulations still lingered as the Dodge Charger's cabin settled back into its familiar quiet. Elmridge High receded behind the tinted windows, leaving all its excitement in the rearview mirror, and just Jaden and his mother, breathing slowly under the golden afternoon light. Jaden leaned in close, the emotion of the moment still coursing through him. Serena's words from the steps of the school reverberated in his mind, and now, as they drove away, he felt more clearly than ever that life's greatest lessons aren't taught in a classroom, but in the quiet resilience his mother lived every day. With one hand on the wheel, Serena gazed ahead, her voice warm and steady, not lecturing, but sharing the wisdom both soldier and mother had taught her. I don't need to shout to protect myself. In life, there will always be people who stand up for me when it matters, just like they did today, for your sake and for those who truly understand me. Sometimes silence and dignity speak louder than 100 words ever could. Jaden listened, his heart swelling. He remembered the protective glances, the applause that filled the auditorium when the 5 Navy SEALs stood, the nods of support from other parents, and the bowed heads of those who had been harsh before. He understood now. His mother's strength wasn't measured by rank or authority, but by her quiet poise, enduring calm, and the boundless love she carried for him. Serena continued, her tone measured, her eyes thoughtful but sincere. Life will give you hundreds of chances to get angry, to fight back against injustice with an outburst. But it's your calm self-respect that will ensure you're never forgotten. When you know who you are and hold fast to your values, no one, even those who try to deny your worth, can strip away your dignity. Jaden nodded, truly grasping for the first time what growing up really meant. He pictured his mother, seated at the eye of the storm without shouting or struggling, her very presence and unwavering gaze enough to move an entire auditorium. Outside the window, the sun dipped lower, stretching their shadows along the quiet road. A reminder that lessons in dignity, self-respect, and love, however simple or silent, leave an indelible mark on our hearts. And in that moment, Jaden knew he would carry these lessons with him always, not through loud words, but through the calm strength and quiet dignity his mother had shown him on that unforgettable day at Elmridge. As the late afternoon sun began to fade over the Elmridge campus, Serena and Jaden Carter slipped quietly away from the crowd's embrace, flanked by the 5 Navy SEALs who'd helped them rewrite this small community's history. They needed no more praise, no viral photos, only the hush of evening and the echo of their shared hearts after a day of storms. Serena's steady stride, her uniform punctuating the sea of graduation robes, and the measured march of her comrades who'd faced death themselves, carried them past hundreds of onlookers, parents, teachers, classmates, skeptics turned silent allies. Children called out encouragement, hands reached out to squeeze theirs, and tears gleamed in the eyes of those who'd doubted they could stand up to injustice. Serena didn't look back. Each step away from this place was a step into the future, for Jaden and for herself. A future built not only on personal success, but on the mark of honor, loyalty, and dignity they'd defended through every trial. Behind them, the Elmridge halls still echoed with applause and shouts of, "She deserved that," and "That's true strength," words that would linger in the town's memory. For Elmridge, the story of Serena and Jaden Carter would transcend a single graduation day. It would become a symbol of a mother's unwavering strength, of loyalty's unshakable value, and most of all, of a lesson for a generation. Honor lies not in words, but in deeds. Steadfastness is not stubbornness, but the courage to stand firm against injustice without losing yourself. Principal Ellen Murphy would share this story at future opening ceremonies. Teachers would weave it into lessons on justice and empathy, and even Karen Walters, the one who once held prejudice, would become an advocate for tolerance after seeing this community transform. When Jaden glanced back at Elmridge one last time, He knew he was taking with him more than a diploma. He carried a legacy, the power passed down from his mother, the ability to inspire courage, love, and respect in everyone around him. As they drove away, trees lining the road slipping past the windows, Jaden clasped his mother's hand, the one that had guided him through every challenge. Their smiles merged with the sunset, silent, radiant beyond any fireworks display. That day, Elmridge didn't just witness a graduation, it witnessed a new generation coming of age, one that understands the timeless strength of right silence, unbreakable unity, and true dignity. And the story of Serena Carter, a mother, a soldier, an inspiration, would live on, guiding anyone brave enough to face and rise above life's injustices. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next meaningful tale. Thank you for joining us.